This is the first part of the series. Once upon a time in ancient China, there was an old musician who was completely lost in his music, singing a song about a warrior named Wang Xiaoxi. Not far from him, Wang Xiaoxi himself was leading his horse along the road. He stopped for a moment to listen to the familiar names in the song. Beside him, there was a box filled with ashes. The curious old musician couldn't help but ask Xiaoxi about what was inside the box. With a touch of sadness in his voice, Xiaoxi explained that the ashes belonged to someone very dear to him, and he was on a quest to find a special place to lay them to rest. Before they went their separate ways, Xiaoxi wanted to know the name of the song that brought back so many memories, and the old musician told him it was called The Hero. Let's take a step back in time, about 10 years ago in China. In those days, heroes and warriors admired two main groups, the Lufenban sect, who were mainly focused on gaining wealth, and the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, known for their commitment to justice and wisdom. In the peaceful Beishu Park, Xiaoxi was being trained by Xu Shaoyi, and one day, he was entrusted with a very important task. He had to deliver a precious white jade box to Su Mengzun, who lived in the bustling capital city. Xiaoyi stressed how crucial this mission was, explaining that the box held great significance for Mengzun's future leadership in the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, and it was absolutely essential that it reached him directly. At the same time, things were heating up in Shili village. The warriors of the Lufenban sect gathered together after Lei Chun, the daughter of their leader, shared some interesting news. She had information about the valuable jade box we mentioned earlier, and she knew it was being brought to the village by someone from the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion by sea. To motivate the warriors, she promised them gold and riches if they could intercept it. The docks became crowded with these warriors, all eager to stop the messenger. However, when the expected ship finally arrived, the messenger was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, in Shili village, Xiaoxi was enjoying a Red Crescent warrior opera. Unfortunately, the show was cut short due to rain. Seeking shelter, Xiaoxi decided to take a break at a local liquor store. Since the place was full, he ended up sharing a table with a man dressed in white. But when Xiaoxi put down a potted plant he was carrying on the table, the warriors in the tavern became suspicious. When they realized that he had come from the sea, they became aggressive. Fortunately, a female warrior named Wenro came to his aid. She's the sister of the Red Crescent swordsman and also a princess, so people are cautious about crossing her. Once they were in a safe place, Wenro couldn't help but wonder why Xiaoxi hadn't used his sword to defend himself back at the liquor store. She was quite intrigued by the potted plant he had with him. Xiaoxi explained that he's careful about drawing his sword. Just then, Bai Choufei, the man Xiaoxi had shared the table with earlier, suddenly appeared. He was after the white jade box that Xiaoxi was carrying. Xiaoxi refused to give it to him, so Bai Choufei left. Shortly after, a man named Shui Xishen showed up. He was a friend of Xiaoxi's teacher and invited them to his place. At Xishen's house, as they enjoyed some wine, Xishen brought up the white jade box. He wanted Xiaoxi to hand it over, claiming that he was the right person to deliver it to Mengzun in the capital. Since Xishen was a trusted friend of Xiaoxi's teacher, Xiaoxi agreed to give him the box. However, things took a surprising turn when Wenro, after chatting and drinking with Xishen, suddenly passed out. Xiaoxi realized that the wine had been spiked, but thankfully, he hadn't taken a sip. Feeling betrayed, he suspected that Xishen might hand over the box to their enemies during an upcoming event called the Sea Ceremony Parade. So, when Wenro woke up, he asked her to accompany him to the event. During the parade, Xiaoxi's suspicions were proven right. Lei Chun demanded the white jade box from Xishen. Poor Xishen didn't have much of a choice because Lei Chun had his family as hostages. To ensure their safety, he had to give up the box she wanted. In the evening, Xiaoxi and Wenro were both at the Sea Ceremony Parade. As the event unfolded, many warriors were keeping a close eye to make sure everything went smoothly. Xiaoxi suggested that Wenro enjoy the parade while he blended into the crowd. Using his skills, he managed to figure out where Xishen had hidden the white jade box. When other warriors realized where the box was, chaos broke out. Xiaoxi signaled Chou Fei using a secret code they had agreed upon earlier. Just then, Lei Chun was approaching in her carriage. Chou Fei boldly blocked her path. Lei Chun tried to tempt him with a high position in the Liufenban sect to let her go, but Chou Fei wasn't swayed by it. Meanwhile, Xiaoxi found himself in a tough situation. He had successfully obtained the white jade box, but now he was surrounded by a group of warriors. Wenro tried to come to his rescue, but a swordsman named Tu Bayan captured her. Xiaoxi was faced with a difficult choice. He remembered his teacher's advice about not using his sword without a good reason, especially for rescues, as it would forever connect his destiny with the person he saved. However, after thinking it over, he drew his sword, defeated the warriors, and freed Wenro. The news of the Liufenban sect warriors' defeat reached Lei Chun, and in response, she ordered the release of Xishen's family. A wounded Xishen met with Xiaoxi and Wenro, confessing that he had been forced to take the box and warning them that Lei Chun would never stop pursuing it. Filled with regret, Xishen made a heartbreaking decision. After all the chaos, Xiaoxi and Wenro met with Chou Fei to express their gratitude for his assistance. Out of curiosity, Chou Fei asked to see what was inside the white jade box. To everyone's surprise, when he opened it, the box was empty. The next day, Xiaoxi was busy burying Xishen, and Wenro couldn't help but wonder about the actual contents of the white jade box. Xiaoxi finally revealed that the real items were actually hidden in the potted plant he always carried with him. Later, they approached Chou Fei, who was relaxing at the beach, and proposed a partnership to protect the box and leave the troublesome Shili region behind. Chou Fei agreed to their proposal. Before they set off, he took them to his parents' graves and opened up, sharing his true name with his new allies. As they journeyed toward the capital, they came across an elderly man singing a song about a hero. Touched by the song, Wenro and Chou Fei expressed their desire to be remembered in such songs. The old man seemed to sense something special about them and asked for their names, hinting at their future heroism. Meanwhile, at the border of the Song State, Mengzun and his men ambushed a group of passing soldiers in the forest. His loyal companion, Yang Wuxie, soon joined him. Mengzun instructed Wuxie to retrieve the head of a specific general that the soldiers were carrying. During this, a mysterious figure shot an arrow with a letter attached. After reading it, Mengzun received the unfortunate news of Xishen's death. Wuxie speculated that Xishen's demise might be part of a larger plot by Hua Wuchuo to gain more power in the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Over at Kuling Pier, Lei Chun had made preparations to travel to the capital. When Xiaoxi, Wenro, and Chou Fei arrived at the pier with the same intention, they noticed that Lei Chun's ship had already set sail. Without wasting a moment, Xiaoxi, known for his musical talents, played his flute to signal the ship to return. To their surprise, the ship actually turned around and returned to the pier. When they boarded, they were greeted by a lady who introduced herself as Tian Chun. Although she was actually Lei Chun in disguise, none of the trio recognized her. Xiaoxi and Chou Fei took advantage of the peaceful moment to do some casual fishing from the ship. This shared experience strengthened their growing friendship even more. Somewhere else, a tense atmosphere hung over the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. A man clearly under pressure was brought before two people, Gudong, a well-known figure within the pavilion, and the more mysterious Wuchuo. After being interrogated about Mengzun's whereabouts and giving the information they wanted, Wuchuo ordered the man to be executed. Gudong, who had become aware of Wuchuo's plan to set a trap for Mengzun, expressed his concerns. He knew that Mengzun was a formidable opponent, and ambushing him wouldn't be an easy task. Later, in a reflective mood, Wuchuo's thoughts went back in time. He remembered the day Su Zimu, the respected leader of the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion and Mengzun's father, had discovered Wuchuo's true loyalty. Originally placed there as a spy from the rival Liufenban sect, Wuchuo was surprisingly spared from severe consequences by Zimu. Recognizing Wuchuo's past contributions to the pavilion, Zimu offered him a chance to be genuinely loyal. However, despite this act of kindness, present-day Wuchuo was harboring ambitions to take control of the pavilion, even if it meant sidelining Meng Zun to achieve his goals. Continuing from where we left off, the peaceful atmosphere on the ship was disrupted by Xiaoxi, Chou Fei, and Wenro, who were having a lively drinking session. They laughed and shared stories until they got quite drunk and eventually passed out. Seizing this opportunity, Lei Chun and her bodyguard began searching through Xiaoxi's belongings in their quest to find the precious white jade box. The seriousness of the situation was emphasized by the bodyguard, who warned that if the Liu Fenban sect got hold of the box, it would bring disaster to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. However, in a surprising turn of events, Lei Chun, possibly torn by inner conflict, ended up killing her own bodyguard and tossed his body into the river. Elsewhere, in a solemn setting, Meng Zun, along with Wu Xie, was conducting a funeral ceremony for their fallen general, showing the proper respect for the solemn occasion. As the sun rose, Xiaoxi and Chou Fei woke up with a sense of worry and quickly checked their belongings. They breathed a sigh of relief when they found that the white jade box was still safe and sound. However, Lei Chun's sudden departure from the ship the previous night left them puzzled. When they disembarked in the capital, the tension between Chou Fei and Wenro reached its breaking point, leading Wenro to decide to go her own way. Xiaoxi's reason for agreeing to this separation was to protect her from the upcoming dangers of their mission. Meanwhile, Meng Zun, anticipating a meeting with Xiaoxi, strategically positioned himself on a platform, making it easier for Xiaoxi to spot him. When they finally met, it was a friendly encounter, and Xiaoxi handed over a letter from Xiao Yi. This exchange marked the beginning of a new friendship between the two of them. At the same time, the Liu Fenban sect's plan to eliminate Meng Zun was unfolding rapidly. Dai Fei Jing, a respected figure within the sect, was gathering his forces for the upcoming attack. Another high-ranking member, Du Zi, was also seen collaborating on this mission. Lei Chun's journey back to Shili was filled with revelations. She confided in her trusted friend, admitting that she had chosen not to steal the white jade box. Her decision was influenced by her father's breaking of a secret promise, which involved acquiring the box without harming anyone. The political and martial complexities of the situation deepened when Gudong and his troops approached Meng Zun in the capital. Under the guise of extending an olive branch and welcoming Meng Zun back to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, Gudong revealed his true intentions. He presented a list of traitors that he promised to eliminate and then unexpectedly launched an attack on Meng Zun. This led to a fierce confrontation, with Meng Zun's forces engaging in a heated battle against Gudong's troops. Du Zi, who had previously been in the shadows, revealed herself and directly confronted the formidable Red Crescent swordsman. Just when Gudong seemed to have the upper hand, a surprising intervention by Lei Hen and his army changed the course of the battle. Meng Zun was in a vulnerable position, but Xiaoxi and Chou Fei stepped forward and joined forces with the Red Crescent swordsman. Their combined strength forced Lei Hen's forces to retreat. Meng Zun, grateful for Xiaoxi and Chou Fei's help, shared a grim truth about his declining health. His recent injuries had worsened an old illness, raising doubts about his ability to continue fighting. However, Xiaoxi, displaying unwavering determination, assured him of their support. Likewise, Chou Fei, despite his known hostility toward the Liu Fenban sect, pledged his commitment to Meng Zun's cause. Meanwhile, Wenro found herself at the Wu family inn, where she encountered Wu Xie. Xiaoxi had sent him to ensure her safety. Wu Xie filled her in on the recent developments, including Xiaoxi's and Chou Fei's alliance with Meng Zun against the Liu Fenban sect. Wenro was skeptical of this information and had doubts about Wu Xi's account of events. In another smart move, Meng Zun, along with Xiaoxi and Chou Fei, made their way to the gates of Pobin. They were welcomed by Shi Wukui. Meng Zun saw promise in Wukui and hoped to make him a trusted ally in the upcoming showdown with the Liu Fenban sect. However, their arrival had already caused some commotion within the sect, with Lei Mei, a high-ranking member, getting ready to oppose their progress. Meng Zun was getting ready for a crucial meeting with Fei Jing, the leader of a powerful group. Realizing the potential danger, he assigned specific tasks to his friends to ensure security. Xiaoxi was stationed at the main entrance, while Chou Fei kept an eye on the upper gate. There were other important figures present, including Lei Mei and the head of the punishment division, Fu Zhongshu. They noticed that Lei Hen was missing, suggesting that he had failed to capture Meng Zun earlier. As the meeting continued, tensions grew higher. Fei Jing boldly stated his intention to challenge Meng Zun directly. While both sides were getting ready for a confrontation, Xiaoxi encountered an unexpected challenge at his post, a mysterious warrior with significant inner strength. However, Xiaoxi's own strength prevailed, and the warrior retreated. This small victory boosted Meng Zun's position, allowing him to leave without a direct clash with Fei Jing. This turn of events left Fei Jing frustrated, and another leader, Lei Sun, had to step in to keep the peace. In a different part of the city, Zimu, who was recovering from a recent illness, was advised by his confidant Mo Baichen to take more time to rest and recover. However, Zemu felt ready to resume his duties and soon met with Wu Chuo, a figure rumored to have connections with the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Shortly after their meeting, Bai Chen received confidential information from Lai Lianxin about Zemu's health, suggesting an urgent matter. Zemu and Wu Chuo had a friendly conversation, but Zemu couldn't help but warn Wu Chuo about the inherent dangers of pursuing Meng Zun. Things took a turn when news arrived about Meng Zun's impending return, prompting Wu Chuo to take the drastic step of imprisoning Zemu. While staying at the Wu family inn, Wenro was feeling quite upset. She found herself confined to a closet by Xiaoxi to prevent her from joining the group on their way to the Liufenban sect's headquarters. Later that day, Meng Zun approached her, trying to ease the tension. He reminded her of her challenging past, particularly the family pressures she faced to get married. These pressures led her to choose the path of a wandering swordsman. In another part of the inn, Xiaoxi and Chou Fei found a quiet spot in the courtyard. They relaxed with some wine and talked about Meng Zun's impressive abilities and Xiaoxi's recent encounter with a mysterious warrior at the Popin Gate. That evening, there was an increased sense of security around Zemu's quarters. Guards sent by Wu Chuo surrounded the area. When Wu Chuo came to visit, Lianxin was on high alert and ready to confront him. However, Zemu stepped in, advising Wu Chuo that taking on Meng Zun would not be a wise decision. Offended by Zemu's confidence in Meng Zun, Wu Chuo responded with a threat, indicating his intentions to harm Zemu's son. The next morning, there was a sense of unity among them. Meng Zun organized a small get-together with Xiaoxi and their friends as a way to show gratitude for their help. Their conversation turned to Meng Zun's upcoming journey to the capital. Xiaoxi came up with a clever plan. He would disguise himself as Meng Zun to divert the attention of potential spies. To make this plan more convincing, Wenro and Wu Xie would go with fake Meng Zun. Meanwhile, Chou Fei would accompany the real Meng Zun to ensure his safety. After everyone agreed to this plan, they started getting ready. At the same time, Meng Zun and Wu Xie discussed an unopened letter from Xiaoxi. Although Wu Xie thought the letter might contain important information, Meng Zun decided to put it aside. Instead, he asked Wu Xie to spread the news about his upcoming arrival in the capital. Later, Xiaoxi, dressed as the Red Crescent swordsman, set off for the capital with Wenro and Wu Shui. Meanwhile, Meng Zun and Chou Fei took a different path, heading to Shili village for a special meeting. Once they reached the capital, Xiaoxi and his group made sure to stand out to create the illusion that Meng Zun had arrived, hoping that eager spies would notice and spread the word. Meanwhile, in another place, two swordsmen named Lai Niantang and Long Xiaoqing were deeply engrossed in a conversation about Wu Chuo's ambitions. They had doubts about his ability to lead the pavilion. Their discussion was suddenly interrupted when an arrow, with a letter attached, landed on their table. Niantang quickly read the message, which called for both him and Xiaoqing to meet Meng Zun at the Jingxin Pavilion. Back in Shili village, Meng Zun and Chou Fei finally reached their destination. There, Meng Zun was reunited with Lei Chun, his former love. During their heartfelt conversation, Lei Chun expressed her relief that Meng Zun had trustworthy allies on his side. When he asked for her opinion on Xiaoxi and Chou Fei, Lei Chun acknowledged their swordsmanship skills. However, she pointed out that Wenro's influence would be crucial in determining their true loyalties. While all of this was happening inside, Chofei remained vigilant outside, ensuring the safety of the meeting and patiently waiting for it to end. In the bustling capital, Xiaoxi and his friends found an inn to rest. As Xiaoxi was getting ready to relax, he felt a bit embarrassed when he noticed a hole in one of his socks. Sensing his discomfort, Wenro tactfully left the room to give him some privacy. Meanwhile, Meng Zun wrapped up his heartfelt conversation with Lei Chun. It was a somber moment as they said their goodbyes, realizing that the upcoming battles between their sects might prevent them from meeting again. Back at the inn, Wenro spent her evening knitting a fresh pair of socks, planning to give them to Xiaoxi. The next morning, she found Xiaoxi standing by a closed window, lost in thought. When she asked him what he was doing, he explained that he could sense the vibes of the capital through his keen hearing. The city's energy was quite different from the tranquility of his home in Beishu Park. Wenro gave him the socks she had made the night before, and they started discussing his disguise as Meng Zun. Xiaoxi seemed confident in his ability to impersonate him. When she tried to open a window for some fresh air, Xiaoxi quickly stopped her, emphasizing the need for privacy in case of potential spies. Their sudden closeness led to an awkward and flustered moment between them. Somewhere else, Wu Chuo's trusted aide, Lu Jiansan, had a meeting with him to discuss their strategy against Meng Zun. Wu Chuo emphasized how important it was to succeed this time and told Jiansan to gather their troops. They were getting ready for a showdown with Meng Zun in the capital. Inside the inn, Xiaoxi mentally prepared himself for the upcoming confrontation. His mind went back to the time when Meng Zun had entrusted him with his sword and taught him his unique fighting style. All of this was to make sure that Xiaoxi's impersonation would be perfect. Meanwhile, Meng Zun and Chofei arrived at the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Chofei took the lead, planning to clear the path so that Meng Zun could enter without getting involved in any fights. This was crucial because Meng Zun had a meeting with his father inside the pavilion. At the Jixin Pavilion, where Xiaoxi was staying, things were getting intense. Wu Chuo and his men arrived and had a conversation with Nian Tang, suggesting that he should choose a side in the upcoming conflict. Just as Xiao Qing attempted to enter Xiaoxi's quarters, Wenro, determined to protect Xiaoxi's identity, splashed water on Xiao Qing's face, telling him to step back. Recognizing her as the Wan family's daughter, Xiao Qing decided it was better to let it go, even though he was clearly annoyed. The time for action had arrived. Both Xiaoxi and Meng Zun lit incense sticks, signaling the start of their plans. Chofei jumped into action, taking on the guards at the pavilion to create an opening for Meng Zun. At the same time, Xiaoxi, still hidden behind curtains, began negotiations with the pavilion's leaders, including Wu Chuo. Meanwhile, Wenro cleverly delayed the meeting, making sure that the pavilion's leaders couldn't leave for their headquarters just yet. In the heart of the pavilion, there was an emotional reunion between Meng Zun and his ailing father, Zimu. Meng Zun gave his father a bottle of wine and a letter that exposed Wu Chuo's deceitful activities, confirming Wu Chuo's betrayal within the pavilion. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, Zimu passed on the pavilion's leadership ring to his son, indicating a shift in power. This gesture showed both Meng Zun's capability and his father's trust in him. As they shared a heartfelt drink, Zimu's life came to an end. Meanwhile, tension was rising at the Jixin Pavilion. Xiaoxi was trying to prove that he was Meng Zun by demonstrating some moves taught by the Red Crescent swordsman. However, his efforts were in vain. An alarm went off, alerting Wu Chuo and the pavilion leaders to potential danger and accidentally revealing Xiaoxi's true identity. Thinking quickly, Xiaoxi informed the assembly that Meng Zun had taken control of the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Rushing to the pavilion hall, Wu Chuo saw Meng Zun, who was the rightful leader of the pavilion. Realizing that further resistance was pointless, Wu Chuo admitted defeat. In a generous gesture echoing his father's values, Meng Zun showed mercy to Wu Chuo. However, forgiving didn't mean forgetting the wrongdoing. In a big meeting with all the pavilion leaders and warriors present, Meng Zun officially expelled Wu Chuo from the pavilion, condemning him for his betrayal in favor of the Lufenban sect. This gathering was a significant moment, as Mengzun solidified his position as the pavilion's main leader, marking the beginning of a new era for the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. After all the significant changes in the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion and the Lufenban sect, everything was different. Jan San's meeting with Lei Sun was the final step in condemning Wu Chuo as a traitor to the sect. Zimu's death had a profound impact, with the pavilion's bell ringing to honor his memory and Lei Chun grieving deeply. But amid the sorrow, Mengzun's worsening health became apparent, adding to the challenges facing the pavilion's leadership. Lei Sun, on the other hand, was pleased that his longtime rival, Zimu, was no longer a threat. However, his dark side was revealed when he was found holding someone captive in a well. To make things even more complex, Lei Sun tried to break the growing bond between Lei Chun and Mengzun by ordering her to assassinate the newly appointed pavilion leader. On the rooftops that night, Xiaoxi, Wenrou, and Chou Fei shared their dreams of becoming famous warriors, creating a peaceful moment. However, the tranquility didn't last long. Wu Chuo, who had fallen from grace, crossed paths with Xiaoxi, hinting at his desire to leave the world of warriors behind. But fate had other ideas. Wu Chuo's departure was violently interrupted by Jan San, a bitter former subordinate. Xiaoxi stepped in to prevent further violence but couldn't save Wu Chuo from death. In his final moments, Wu Chuo gave Xiaoxi a cryptic warning, advising him to stay away from the capital, suggesting that there were larger conspiracies at play. After Zimu's funeral, the relationships and dynamics within the pavilion were changing. Lion Xin's decision to leave was a poignant one. Her bond with Mengzun had deepened over shared experiences, and her father had cared for Mengzun during his younger years. Their parting highlighted Mengzun's fragile health, a matter of great concern to him and his close ally, Chou Fei. In the city, tension simmered between the two main factions, the Lufenban sect and the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Xiaoxi experienced this firsthand as he walked the city streets with Chou Fei and Wenrou. A reckless wagon incident revealed the power balance and unspoken rules between these groups. Chou Fei's desire to intervene and Wenrou's caution showed how even simple actions could have big political consequences. The events after the cart entered Lufenban sect territory exposed the sect's dark side. When the merchant introduced Fei Jing to the bodyguard Lei Chun had targeted, it revealed a complex web of betrayals and loyalties. The Lufenban sect wasn't just about power and politics. It was a place where loyalties were tested and failure led to severe consequences. Fei Jing's reaction to the bodyguard's survival, branding him a traitor and punishing him harshly, highlighted the sect's ruthlessness and strict code of conduct. The city's politics weren't just about territory. They also involved personal vendettas, loyalties, and the constant threat of death. Xiaoxi and his friends had plans to eat at a restaurant, but Chou Fei said he had something to do and asked them to go ahead. However, Chou Fei surprised them by going to gamble instead, trying to predict his future with a coin toss. While he was deep in the game, Wenrou and Xiaoxi came running, being chased by a group from a nearby tavern. Chou Fei stepped in and scared the chasers away. To avoid further trouble, Wenrou and Xiaoxi decided to go in different directions. As Xiaoxi tried to find a place to hide, he accidentally ended up in a brothel where he met Zhu Xiaoyao. He wanted to leave right away, but Xiaoyao was worried that his sudden exit might make her establishment look bad. So, out of politeness, Xiaoxi stayed to talk. Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Xiaoyao offered him some wine. After drinking it, he passed out. While Xiaoxi was regaining his senses, Wenrou and Chou Fei were frantically searching for him in town. When he woke up, Xiaoyao teased him, joking that they had a romantic night together and even suggesting they should get married. Panicked, Xiaoxi tried to make a quick exit through a window. But his plan didn't go well, as he ended up falling right in front of Wenrou and Chou Fei. They saw him coming out of a brothel, and Wenrou, frustrated and upset, walked away while Xiaoxi struggled to explain himself. Xiaoyao, from a distance, watched the whole thing, finding Xiaoxi's misadventures rather amusing. Meanwhile, Chou Fei finally caught up with Xiaoxi and wanted to show him the coin he had bet earlier to see if he won. However, before they could do that, a high-ranking government official named Fu Zongshu arrived with his guards and arrested them. Both young men were confused about why they were being taken into custody, and Zongshu didn't offer any explanations. They were thrown into a cell that seemed to have recently held another prisoner who had been severely punished by Ren Lao, known for his brutal methods of extracting confessions. Meanwhile, Wenro, unaware of her friend's situation, impatiently waited for them at a local tavern. Inside the cell, Xiaoxi and Chou Fei suspected that their arrest might be linked to the notorious Lufenban sect. Chou Fei cautioned them to be careful, especially around Zongshu. Their conversation was cut short when a guard arrived to take Xiaoxi for questioning. Ren Lao, determined to extract a confession, accused Xiaoxi of causing trouble in the city involving a jade box. Despite Xiaoxi's denials, Ren Lao subjected him to a painful method of stretching his arms. Then, it was Chou Fei's turn to face interrogation. Zongshu wanted to know why Chou Fei had helped Meng Zun before. Chou Fei tried to explain, but he too endured a brutal interrogation method, nearly drowning. After these intense sessions, Zongshu ordered Ren Lao not to kill the two young men. It seemed he had plans to manipulate them into serving him. The next day, Wenro decided to visit the brothel, thinking Xiao Yao might know where Xiaoxi was. When she entered Xiao Yao's room, she became upset and accused her of hiding Xiaoxi. Her frustration led to her breaking some items in the room, which prompted the brothel guards to intervene. Just then, Wu Xie arrived after hearing about Wenro's actions. He apologized to Xiao Yao and convinced Wenro to leave with him. He assured her that both he and Meng Zun would help in the search for the missing Xiaoxi and Chou Fei. Soon after, Ren Lao paid a visit to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, where Meng Zun and his comrades were mourning. Despite the sorrowful atmosphere, Ren Lao brought firecrackers and conveyed Zongshu's orders to set them off. When Meng Zun hesitated, Ren Lao threatened the lives of Xiaoxi and Chou Fei, who were imprisoned. To ensure their safety, Meng Zun reluctantly ordered his men to light the firecrackers. Upon learning that her friends were in custody, Wenro approached Wu Xie, urging him to rescue them. However, he advised caution and discouraged hasty actions against the authorities. Ignoring his counsel, Wenro took matters into her own hands. She ignited fireworks on a road that Zongshu was expected to pass through. Her bold act resulted in her arrest. Surprisingly, instead of punishing her, Zongshu allowed Wenro to join her friends in jail. Wenro arrived at the prison gate with fireworks, determined to free Xiaoxi and Chou Fei. Inside their cell, the two friends grappled with hunger as the jailers provided them with only raw meat. However, the distant sound of fireworks offered them a glimmer of hope for a potential rescue. The following day, Meng Zun took it upon himself to negotiate with Zongshu for their release. Zongshu presented his terms. Xiaoxi and Chou Fei would not be allowed to return to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, and in exchange for their freedom, Meng Zun would have to carry out an assignment for him. Feeling trapped and wanting to save his friends, Meng Zun reluctantly accepted the conditions. Following the tense negotiation, Meng Zun's health appeared to worsen. He confided in Wu Xie about his assignment. He had to travel to the western region and target an official named Liu and Shi, as demanded by Zongshu. Meng Zun also entrusted Wu Xie with the safety of Xiaoxi and Chou Fei. In the jail, Chou Fei was on the verge of giving in to hunger and eating the raw meat, but Xiaoxi stopped him. A sudden rain shower reminded them of their dreams of becoming warriors. Before they knew it, they were released from prison, facing Fei Jing, who invited them to join the Lufenban sect, since they couldn't return to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. However, they declined, even when offered prestigious positions within the sect. Afterward, Chou Fei and Xiaoxi attempted to find jobs in the city, but every employer turned them away. Local businesses were afraid of getting into trouble with the Lufenban sect. Meanwhile, back at the sect, Lei Mei questioned Fei Jing about his decision not to eliminate Xiaoxi and Chou Fei. He explained that taking such action might provoke a conflict between their sect and the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Lei Mei expressed her concerns to Lei Sun, but he supported Fei Jing's approach. At a marketplace, Wenro tried to help Xiaoxi and Qiufei by having someone intentionally drop money near them. However, Xiaoxi quickly returned the money. Watching from a distance, Wuxie told Wenro that this trick wouldn't work and encouraged her to come up with a new plan. While Qiufei felt frustrated with Xiaoxi for returning the money they found, especially since they were hungry, an unexpected opportunity arose. A blind elderly lady named Xiahua, who turned out to be Wenro's maid, approached them and asked for their help in baking bread. She even offered them a place to stay. Grateful for the offer, they followed her to her home and settled into a room she provided. As they relaxed, Qiufei and Xiaoxi discussed the difficulties they faced in the capital. Xiaoxi opened up about his painful past, including the loss of his mother in the city. Through their shared challenges, they made a pact to confront everything together. That same night, a threat emerged. Lei Sun sneaked into Xiahua's home with the intention of harming the two friends. However, Master Wu Fuzi, sent by the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, intervened and forced Lei Sun to retreat. Meanwhile, Xiaoxi, unable to sleep, ventured outside to meditate and reminisced about his memories with Xiao Yi at Beishu Park. As he finished his meditation and returned, he was surprised to find Fuzi, Chahua's husband, standing before him. With the morning sun heralding new beginnings, Xiaoxi took Fuzi's advice to heart and secured a job at a drugstore, thanks to his organizational skills and neat handwriting. Qiufei, known for his artistic talent, found employment at a calligraphy and painting shop. Their workdays concluded with hearty dinners at Fuzi's home. One evening, Meng Zun paid a visit to Fuzi's place, where they engaged in deep conversations about the enigmatic Yuchou group. Meng Zun was convinced that this group played a role in the unrest in the region. Qiufei's artistic talent began to gain recognition. An impressed customer suggested that Qiufei create more mainstream art that would appeal to a wider audience. They made a deal. The man would sell Qiufei's paintings, and they would share the profits. At the drugstore, Xiaoxi spent his days cataloging medicines with his precise handwriting. However, one day, things got interesting when Xiao Yao walked in and specifically requested his service. As he helped her, she made ambiguous comments that made the store owner think there might be a romantic history between them. Meanwhile, over at the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion, Wenro tried to make a sneaky escape. She concocted a fake letter from her father, hoping to convince Wuxie that she needed to return home. However, Wuxie saw through her ruse and put a stop to her plans. A few days later, Qiufei's foray into the world of art didn't go as planned. The man who initially showed interest in Qiufei's artwork couldn't grasp the deeper meaning of his recent pieces. Sadly, the shop owner confirmed that none of Qiufei's paintings had been sold. It appeared that the art world was proving to be as challenging as their previous adventures. Xiaoxi's situation took a dire turn when a fire engulfed the drugstore where he worked. As the flames consumed his workplace, Xiaoxi's hopes were dashed. He had lost another source of income. That evening, as he meditated to gather his thoughts and find solace, Qiufei expressed concerns about the cold weather and suggested that Xiaoxi wear warmer clothes during his nighttime meditations. While Qiufei suspected that the fire might have been caused by the Lufenban sect, Xiaoxi attributed the incident to his unlucky fate. Wenro's restless spirit still longed for a way out of the pavilion's confines. During one of her secret outings, she met the storyteller again and shared the challenges she and her friends had faced. Later, she had an unexpected encounter with Lei Chun. They talked, and Wenro suggested that Lei Chun should recruit Xiaoxi and Qiufei into the Lufenban sect. However, Lei Chun noticed that the two young men seemed disillusioned with the world of martial arts. As they continued their stroll, they came across the art shop displaying Qiufei's paintings. Lei Chun admired one particular piece. When he inquired about the artist, the seller explained Qiufei's humble background. However, much to Qiufei's disappointment, Lei Chun decided not to buy the artwork right away, even though he was intrigued by it. Meanwhile, Xiaoxi's situation was getting worse. He had to resort to a risky game where he dodged thrown stones for money. This dangerous activity attracted some shady characters. Jan San, a notorious figure, had been watching Xiaoxi from the shadows. He saw a chance to get rid of the young warrior and ordered his men to join the game, replacing stones with arrows. Xiaoxi, in a display of both bravery and desperation, agreed to this life-threatening challenge. It was Chou Fei who intervened just in time to stop this dangerous game. Although he saved his friend, Chou Fei couldn't hide his disappointment. He scolded Xiaoxi for risking his life for a small amount of money, but Xiaoxi, frustrated, explained that it was the only way for him to survive in the tough city. Later that evening, with his challenges mounting, Xiaoxi considered seeking help from the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. He stood in front of its impressive gates, torn between his pride and the urgency of his situation. But before he could gather the courage to knock, doubt took over and he decided against it. However, his moment of relief was short-lived. Jian San and his gang of thugs had been lying in wait, thinking they had a perfect chance to ambush Xiaoxi as he left the pavilion. However, they underestimated Xiaoxi's martial skills and his heightened awareness. In a whirlwind of action, Xiaoxi took on the attackers, defeating them with his agility, strength, and techniques. The streets, which were filled with the sounds of the battle just moments ago, fell silent as Xiaoxi stood among his defeated foes. He let out a frustrated roar, and Jian San lay defeated at his feet. At the same time, Lei Mei took Chou Fei to a fancy bar in the city. She shared her perspective, emphasizing that martial arts skills alone might not be enough for a meaningful life in the bustling capital. She pointed out that many talented warriors ended up performing on the streets just to make a living. This made Chou Fei deeply reflect on his situation, and he silently decided to leave the city, keeping his intentions hidden from Xiaoxi. In another part of the city, Lei Chun was deep in her thoughts and prayers, wishing for Meng Zun's safe return from his journey. She eventually received news that Meng Zun had indeed come back safely from his expedition to the west. Upon returning, Meng Zun paid a visit to Zhang Shu's residence. He handed Zhang Shu a box, and to Zhang Shu's surprise, it contained the head of someone related to his shady dealings, but not the exact person he had expected. This enraged Zhang Shu, and he threatened Meng Zun. However, Meng Zun had some powerful information about Zhang Shu's secrets, which he used to ensure his own safety. As the next day dawned, Xiaoxi learned about Chou Fei's decision to journey alone, but he was determined to accompany his friend. At the same time, in the pavilion, Meng Zun had a meeting with Wu Xie. They discussed the illicit activities led by Zhang Shu and his connections to the Lufenban sect in the state of Liang. Meng Zun had hoped to get more information from Enshi, but just when it seemed Enshi might reveal crucial details, he was mysteriously killed. Upon learning about this development, Wu Xie also found out about Xiaoxi and Chou Fei's plan to leave the capital. At the edge of the city, Wenro was clearly annoyed. She was mad that Xiaoxi and Chou Fei hadn't told her they were leaving. In her usual way, she directed them to a place where Meng Zun was waiting, a spot for swordsmen. When they arrived, Meng Zun warmly greeted them, saying he saw them as brothers. To strengthen this bond, he suggested they take a traditional vow of brotherhood. They'd agreed, and after a heartfelt ceremony, they decided not to leave the city after all. Instead, they chose to stay with Meng Zun and went to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Inside the pavilion, Meng Zun was a friendly host. He gave them a tour and introduced them to other members. He even went the extra mile and offered Chou Fei an important role as his representative. This position came with perks, like a room stocked with fancy drinks. Later, at a formal event, Meng Zun officially welcomed Chou Fei and Xiaoxi to the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. Another member named Wu Xie spoke about them. When introducing Xiaoxi, Wu Xie playfully hinted at his supposed first love, making Wenro jealous. However, after the event, Wu Xie clarified to Wenro that the story about Xiaoxi's romantic past was just a joke. On another front, Lei Sun and Fei Jing received an invitation to visit Zhang Shu's home. Zhang Shu was worried that Meng Zun might expose his illegal activities to the authorities. Fei Jing, trying to reassure him, claimed that Meng Zun had no knowledge of those shady dealings. Feeling trapped and defiant, Zhang Shu asked Lei Sun and Fei Jing to handle Meng Zun, whom he believed was going too far. At the Liufenban sect, Lei Chun played her lute and heard about Xiaoxi and Chou Fei joining the Jinfeng Rain Pavilion. She thought it might be nice to have a meal with them. However, Fei Jing had different ideas. He met with Xiao King and attempted to create conflict by turning the pavilion leaders against Chou Fei, who had recently risen in rank. But Xiao King saw through Fei Jing's scheme. Feeling cornered, Fei Jing threatened Xiao King with evidence of past dealings with a man named Wu Chuo, forcing him to cooperate. In the evening, Xiaoxi and his friends had a delicious meal courtesy of Lei Chun. They shared stories and experiences over dinner. As they left the restaurant, Lei Chun realized she had dropped her hairpin. When she returned to retrieve it, she found Chou Fei waiting for her, and he returned the lost item. Chou Fei took the opportunity to play a sweet melody on his flute, serenading the girl he had feelings for. Meanwhile, Lei Chong, an important figure from the Liufenban sect, teamed up with Lei Sun to gather a group of soldiers who were involved in their illegal activities. However, Lei Sun tricked them. He coerced these soldiers into undertaking a dangerous mission by threatening to harm their families if they refused. After they complied and met a tragic end, Lei Sun showed no mercy. He instructed Lei Chong to eliminate the soldiers' families as well. Elsewhere, Zhang Shu anxiously awaited updates in his home, while outside, the usually bustling streets were strangely quiet, catching Nian Tang's attention as he noticed the absence of the usual guard patrols. In the pavilion, Xiao King expressed his displeasure about Chou Fei's new position to other pavilion officials. However, this meeting wasn't just for venting frustrations. Xiao King had darker intentions. He plotted to eliminate some of the pavilion's top leaders. After successfully carrying out his sinister plan, he proudly showed his actions to Fei Jing. With newfound ambition, Xiao King proposed targeting the leaders of the Liufenban sect next, believing his friend Nian Tang would join the cause. To his surprise, Nian Tang had switched sides, and instead of assistance, Xiao King found himself betrayed and captured by Fei Jing. At Zhang Shu's place, he received updates about recent actions by the Liufenban sect and prepared Ren Lao for what lay ahead. The Jinfeng Rain Pavilion was in chaos due to Fei Jing and his gang's disruption. This chaos revealed the shocking news of Xiao King's capture by the sect and Nian Tang's treachery. While Chou Fei was eager to confront Fei Jing, Meng Zun had a different plan. He saw potential in Fei Jing and believed that the two groups could merge for mutual benefit. Meng Zun tasked Xiaoxi with rescuing Xiao King, while he himself would save those who possessed knowledge of the corrupt dealings between the sect and Zhang Shu. In another location, Xiao King was enduring torture as Lei Hen pressed her for information about the pavilion, but she remained steadfast and didn't reveal anything. Meanwhile, as Xiaoxi and Chou Fei infiltrated the sect, Xiaoxi headed straight for the area where Xiao King was supposed to be held. He was drawn in by the enchanting melodies played by Xiao Yao on her traditional instrument. However, as soon as Lei Hen sensed Xiaoxi's presence, he strategically retreated, luring him further inside. To Xiaoxi's surprise, he found that the person in the room wasn't Xiao King. Realizing he had been deceived by Lei Hen, Xiaoxi prepared for a duel against two opponents. Fortunately, Xiao Yao intervened, dealing with the imposter and allowing Xiaoxi to focus on Lei Hen. In another chamber, Nian Tang was enjoying his newfound status within the Liufenban sect. His celebration was abruptly interrupted when Chou Fei burst in, taking on Nian Tang's guards. Unbeknownst to Chou Fei, Nian Tang had set a trap, and he fell into it. Just when things seemed dire for Chou Fei, an enigmatic swordsman suddenly entered the fray, coming to his aid. Elsewhere, after defeating Lei Hen, Xiaoxi found himself locked in a room. Desperate to escape, he called out to Xiao Yao for help. However, instead of assisting him, she jokingly suggested they spend the night together in the room. Xiaoxi, not amused by her playful attitude, thought she was acting strangely. Amidst the chaos, Lei Chong was relentlessly pursuing Long Ba, a young man who knew about the sect's illegal activities. As things appeared grim for Long Ba, Meng Zun appeared and ensured the young man's safety, rescuing him from danger. Later, Chou Fei and Xiaoxi, along with Xiao King, reunited with Meng Zun. However, their joy was short-lived. As dawn approached, they were suddenly ambushed by Fei Jing and Zhang Shu. Just as the skirmish was escalating, the forces from the Law Division stepped in, putting an end to the battle as the first light of day broke. In a subsequent meeting, Meng Zun revealed to Chou Fei and Xiao Shi that Zhang Shu had connections with the Yuqiu criminal syndicate. This revelation explained why Meng Zun was so protective of Long Ba, even though the young man was visibly distressed due to the traumatic loss of his family. Later that evening, Xiao Shi approached Xiao Yao, hoping to have an honest conversation about the night they spent together. However, to his frustration, Xiao Yao continued to make jokes and playfully avoided his questions. Eventually, she left him alone after he had some wine. To Xiao Shi's surprise, Wenro was nearby and had witnessed their interaction. She admitted that she knew about Xiao Yao's harmless pranks on Xiao Shi. Feeling the need to explain himself, Xiao Shi shared the story of his sword and how it connected him to Wenro, because he had once used it to help her. Meanwhile, Chou Fei wandered through the town and came across a painting shop owner who informed him that his artwork had been sold. The owner was thrilled and requested more paintings from Chou Fei, who happily agreed to create additional pieces. This is the end of the first part. So the moral of the story is, if life tosses you a coin, catch it with chopsticks, dance like nobody's watching, and remember, even if you fall into a brothel by mistake, you might just stumble upon a spicy love story.